Welcome, everybody. Crawl into your interior cave and listen to The Hermit
and his wife, where we talk spirituality, parenting, Catholicism, inside and out.
Well, hi there. I'm on the squeaky chair again.
Same intro. Hey, everybody.
Same intro. Nell
Same
says,
intro.
well, hi there. And you say, hey, everybody, to the camera like a deadpan.
If you have some suggestions on a different intro for her
Oh!
or for me on how to respond to it, I'm open.
Oh my gosh.
Send it in.
You're right.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about something I encounter a lot today. Should I tell them or should you tell them? Who's going to break the news?
What?
The news of our topic.
Oh, go for it.
Okay. We're talking about discouragement and hope and spiritual warfare. So if that sounds really ominous,
It's kind of a...
I mean, it's not as ominous as it sounds.
It's kind of a rainy day. It's kind of
It
dark
is.
outside. We've got
gloomy.
a candle, like a red votive candle lit on the background. It seems appropriate to talk about spiritual warfare.
It does.
Yeah. Well, it's going on all the time.
That's true, even when we're not aware of it. So we're going to touch on three big things. We're going to touch on what is discouragement, how does that tie in with spiritual warfare, and then lastly talk about like where's the hope and how do we climb out of it. But first, huge disclaimer that discouragement and spiritual warfare, we're not talking about when you are suffering and battling with mental illness. That's a totally different category. Sometimes people conflate the two and say, well, you just got to pray your way out of it. Certainly if you're dealing with mental illness or just mental challenges and mental health stuff, of course prayer is an important part, of course all of that, but this is not to downplay the seriousness and the levity of needing professional help or needing pharmaceuticals or needing talk therapy or needing any of those things. So I just want to put that out there. Okay, so what is discouragement? Let's define our terms.
I think we should talk about spiritual warfare first, because...
Spiritual warfare. Do you like the underpinning?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like tying hope and discouragement. I mean, I get to know, kind of what your playing field is, right?
Okay. So what's spiritual warfare?
Do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you. I also think I'm sitting closer to the camera. I'm just really not getting in the right spot today. All right, we're settled in. We've got our warm beverages. Anthony, talk about spiritual warfare. What do you think?
Oh man, I love spiritual warfare. It's like one of my
Is that
favorite
something
topics.
you should say you love?
Well, no,
You're weird.
It is. Well, I don't know if it's weird. It's just that it's
but
like
what is it?
okay. So I think for most of us, it's very easy to become complacent. I mean, I imagine that most of our crowd are Catholics. It's very easy for people to just kind of become complacent in their,
Just autopilot.
in your spiritual life, or
For
not even complacent, but you haven't really learned, I guess, what is the spiritual life and what's it composed of? How do I grow in it? Or they haven't, really haven't, expended the effort in growing that. So, okay, so I guess.
Woo! I'm excited. Tell us everything.
I mean, I think that to talk coherently about spiritual warfare, we have to understand that we're made in the image and likeness of God. And I love that line. We had the Baltimore Catechism the other day, well, where is the chief likeness to God? Well, it's chiefly in the soul, right? We have a body as people, human people, persons. We have a body, we have a soul. It's a composite, body soul composite. One of my philosophy professors in the seminary, Dr. John Thornbrew, may he rest in peace. He'd always talk about the body soul composite.
Ooh, I like that. There's a little hand clenchy. For those of you listening and not watching, Anthony's doing like a.
It's
very effective.
Yeah.
Composite.
So as a human being, you're meant to have a body. You're meant to have a soul. They're meant to be together. They're not. It's not like this dualistic sort of thing. They work together. Mm-hmm. That's a very important concept for spiritual warfare that we're going to talk about in your own spiritual life. So, but with the soul, you've got two faculties. You've got an intellect, and you've got a will, right? So we're like God insofar as we can know things, understand things, and we can will things. So, the spiritual life is trying to perfect, chiefly these faculties, but their influence, is because we're human beings and we have bodies. There's material influences on that, what we think about, what we desire, how we're moved.
Late night cravings for ice cream. That would be me.
That's right. So, in your spiritual life, we're meant to be united with God here on earth. We have material things that surround us, which are they're good in and of themselves. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to perfect our or be rightly ordered. We're trying to be rightly ordered in understanding what is truly good, what is true, and our intellect is moved towards what we perceive to be the good. So,
gotta inform that intellect.
Yeah. So our will, if our understanding is not formed properly, and it doesn't sort of help the will in figuring out what is truly good, you're gonna desire things, you're gonna seek things that aren't necessarily truly good. So
can you explain what you mean by truly good, like of God, that will bring us back to God, like what the ultimate good? We talk about good, like, but 5 ice cream bars do taste good, but
Wow.
They're not necessarily, like, being gluttonous isn't going to draw me toward like the final goal of goodness.
That's right. So something that's good, just that there's an object, there's a thing, there's something that the will wants. You want that. You're moved towards that. So everybody acts, even if we're doing something that is disordered, sinful. We're doing something because our will, it wants it, and
We're drawn to it.
So it
Yeah.
thinks that is good. That's even if it's just for the sake of pleasure, we perceive that to be the good, and so we're moved towards that. So that in the spiritual life, you're trying to work with God's grace. You're trying to be rightly ordered in your emotional responses to things, how you're thinking about things, and so it's. I guess one of the chief principles that we need to have people understand is that you're a spiritual organism. By being in the state of grace, you have participation in the life of God, and you're trying to maintain that. You're trying to go closer to Him.
You got to just pause at that, because no, don't be apologetic, because when you're in the state of grace, you are participating and partaking in the life of the divine. That's like earth-shattering. When you think about what motivates us to want to have our rightly ordered will, I mean, there it is. That's pretty amazing.
That's right. I mean, God dwells. If you're in the state of grace, God dwells within you through sanctifying grace. So you want to maintain that, and one of the ways that you can lose sanctifying grace by mortal sin, which is it's a serious sin. You have to know that it's serious, and you have to do it anyway. So at a minimum, you want to avoid that. But spiritual warfare is, it's sort of the there's a couple of things. One is we're constantly being influenced by ourselves, our own, whether we're ordered or disordered. We're constantly trying to battle against our perfection. So St. Francis de Sales talks about for humans, we're never going to be fully perfect. This
big news alert.
This side of heaven.
It's not happening.
But perfection, in a sense, consists of constantly trying to strive against your own imperfection. So we have our own influences. So we have our own. They call them appetites. How we're sort of moved towards something. So there's the irascible appetites. We're moved towards anger or envy, like we want something somebody else has, or we have something. So jealousy. We want to keep it for ourselves, not let other people have it. So
The ice cream.
The ice cream. Yeah, get out of the freezer drawer. Those are for me. The irascible appetites, and then you have the concupiscible appetites, which are more towards like ice cream bars and things like that our body like sensory pleasures and things like that. So we're just trying to maintain a proper order and be in right relationship with God. So one of the big influences is our own self and our own imperfections.
And something I love when you point that out is it can feel like sin is really vague, and sin and struggles like with our conscience are really blanketed, but it's actually extremely personal, because we have different faults and failings and inroads for Satan than anybody else. So how I'm going to be tempted is different than how you're going to be tempted, how she is and he is. It's a very personal thing. It's not just it's out there, it's out to get you. No, it's working with what we already have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
that's why it's personal warfare. It's not like, there's something going on with the angels and the devils, I don't know, some like catechism somewhere. Like, it's very personal to us.
Yeah, there's to throw out there, there's a really it's sort of a humorous book, but it's really interesting. Is C.S. Lewis's Screwtape Letters?
Yeah.
Where it's like a little demon. He's assigned to this person that he's trying to tempt and those things, and he's writing these letters back and forth with his uncle, who's a more experienced demon and like tempting.
It is interesting. It's fascinating though. It's that insight into it.
Yeah. So in the book, it's like, well, I don't even have to do anything because the person, you're sort of messing it up on your own. So you don't even they can kind of sit back and just kind of let you go. So we're constantly struggling with our own selves.
But then there's the second part of spiritual warfare. So we're fighting against ourselves, our own predilections.
Yeah.
Amongst the other half. Well,
the other thing too is just being aware that this is going on, and that it's a daily battle. I mean, you have to be aware of that. You have to want to strive for perfection. You have to want to strive for for God. And there's these different helps to help you get there. But one of the biggest things is just being aware of it.
You're right. You're totally right. Because then you can separate it out in your mind. This is a temptation. This is just me. This is like, you can actually parse things as they come to you instead of just constantly reacting and responding.
Right. So there's ourselves, and then probably even on top of that is temptations from evil spirits. So in the sense that I like the theologians talk about the majority, like St. Thomas Aquinas talks about the majority of creation, God's creation, is not even the material world. Like that the majority of creation is actually
I've never heard that.
Angels. Yeah.
Fallen and otherwise.
Fallen.
That's wow.
Fallen and otherwise.
That's wild.
And
there's a lot of angels and a lot of demons.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of fallen angels, and there's a lot of good angels that are still there. So, a lot of times people also sort of think about there's the devil and that's it, and they don't think about anybody else. But that's in Catholic theology, that's actually the understanding is that all of these demons are working in conjunction with one another, and they all sort of have their own assigned tasks. So one of the understandings is that every person who's born has a guardian angel. There's different levels of angels. The lowest level is guardian angel. So God presented, at the beginning of creation, God presented this opportunity. Are you going to accept this assignment, or are you not going to accept this assignment? But you have a guardian angel. You've got a guardian angel. I've got a guardian angel.
Thank God for mine. Working overtime.
And there's even angels that are assigned to particular places, like a country or, or even a family. Like one of my seminary professors who's done a lot of writing, he chiefly is concerned with, he's devoted himself to exorcisms. He said that even families have their own. When you get married, there's actually a guardian angel that's assigned to your family that's separate from, individual guardian angels. So
that's pretty awesome.
That's pretty awesome. On the flip side, you have a demon that's constantly trying to, tempt you.
Okay, so this is like back in like a cartoon from the 50s or the 40s where there's like a good angel and a bad angel. It's like kind of a joke. It's like kind of a joke, but you're saying specifically that to be aware that there is an actual temptation force in our lives on a daily basis. And it's not just our own fallen nature, it's this outside spiritual force as well. It's helpful for the awareness, don't you think?
Yeah, it is. It is really helpful for the awareness. And I think that there's just so much to sort of talk about here, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure how coherent this is quite yet. But
I think you're very
before we get into that, so when you're talking about starting with our own selves or dealing with sort of outside influences, I'll call them. So I'll just say good spirits, bad spirits, is that you have to understand sort of how human beings know things, or how we're moved by things. So, for instance, guardian angel or good angel or good spirits, bad spirits, they can't move your will. They can't control your immaterial faculties. So your intellect and your will. But what they can do, because something that's immaterial can act on what is lower, which is material, they can actually introduce affect your imagination. So they can introduce an idea, like an image into your imagination, or they can sort of pull something from your memory, and introduce that into your imagination. So they can act on the material side of your faculties. And so what once that image is in your imagination, that's up to you. You can you can entertain that thought. You can you can want that with your will, or you can set it aside and not be moved by that. So it can actually be an opportunity for exercising virtue. So you just have to be aware that your imagination is a key component to things. Is that images, thoughts that are in your head, things that you hear. It's really important to be cognizant of that and sort of keep custody of that, because that's where we sort of get.
It's like a playground.
Yeah, right. It's a playground, and so we've talked sometimes or a lot about the divine office, and there's which is the official prayer of the church, public prayer of the church. So according to the books of 1962, I call them the Old Rite Office. So there's Compline, which is night prayer in the new office, but Compline, there's a reading at the very beginning of Compline every single day of the week, 7 days a week, without fail. It's from 1 Peter 5. It says, be sober and alert, because your adversary, or your opponent, the devil, is prowling about like a lion, looking for people to devour. And then St. Peter says, resist him solid in your faith. So there's this constant warfare that's going on. So it's trying. The devil wants it. He is your adversary. He doesn't want what's best for you. He wants to knock you down. And maybe that's a good segue to talk about discouragement and despair or
hopelessness.
Hopelessness is that you want to maintain. It's important in the spiritual life to try to maintain an equanimity of the soul, like peace of the soul. And so, because once you sort of get sort of like have this interior disquietude, that can lead to bad things. That can be caused by different things. And so something that's important is to kind of put your finger on, well, what is causing this interior disquietude?
What's bringing me here?
Because if it's sin, well, that's actually a good thing, because
it's like an easier thing.
Then you can address it, right. But there are these temptations, that, but you've mentioned, different things that have sort of moved you to, despair or, just really, I don't know.
Yeah, but I think that, I see this. I see the big, especially right now in this interesting time we're living in, discouragement. It's like everybody rallied, and now we're like, when are we getting out of shelter in place? When it's like be normal. So I see a lot of discouragement in the women that I know and that I minister to through Blessed Is She. I experience it myself, but something really specific for me, I've encountered a lot of discouragement, and maybe you have too, when you're about to do something that could bring about a lot of good. Like every time I'm about to go lead a women's group or give a talk or, do something that's like a more public thing, bringing the good news in whatever way, I feel major spiritual attack ahead of time. All the thoughts of, why am I even going? No one's going to come. The people who come aren't going to care. I have nothing of interest to say. I'm such a bumpkin. I'm so frumpy. They're not going to want to hear from me. All of this, like, incredible discouragement. And man, there have been times where I'm pulling out in front of the house and Anthony's waving, like, it'll be great. Just let the Holy Spirit do his thing. And I have to remember, okay, this isn't about me. This isn't about me. This is about just putting myself where God's asking me to go. So, man, that discouragement, it like really eats away at you though. And it's taken time, and it's taken being close to the sacraments and a deeper prayer life for me to be able to stop the thought. Like literally that stop think mechanism people talk about in psychology circles, like stop the thought and say, you know what? I'm not giving into this right now. Yeah, maybe I'm gonna look stupid and sound stupid and no one cares. Maybe, okay. But I'm not doing this for me. I'm not doing this to self-aggrandize and be amazing. I'm doing this because this is what God's called me to do, this opportunity to love other people and be with other people in front of me, and I'm going to take this opportunity. And I could totally flop and fail and look dumb, and that's okay. Like to distinguish that this temptation for discouragement, this temptation to think like this is worthwhile, this is like worthless, it's not worthwhile, to say like, oh, that's a temptation. Instead of getting on the phone with Anthony or my sister or Jen, I'd be like, oh, instead of this like endless verbal processing that you've been on the receiving end many times. Hey, I mean, sometimes you still gotta process, but to say like, oh, I'm recognizing this for what it is. This is discouragement. This isn't from God. Because sometimes I think it ties in with humility. Like, oh, if I'm really humble, I won't think highly of myself. So then I'll be discouraged. It's this false sense of humility. Like, well, if you're humble, you know that you're worthless. But that's not the same as true humility. Like, discouragement is never from God. God's never going to put on your heart, you suck.
Wow. That should go on a t-shirt.
I don't know, it's not like that language appropriate for children.
Well,
he doesn't do that. That's the spirit. That's the bad spirit.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, and it can even come from ourselves, like like you said, sort of a sense of pride or something, and being afraid to flop on your face or whatever. But there's certain principles. One of them is I love the line from Philippians where I think it's in chapter 4. St. Paul talks about don't be anxious about anything. Put everything in God's hands, and even if you do flop,
that's okay.
It's not going to be the end of the world. Like, look, placing confidence in God is just, it's one of those fundamental things that you constantly have to do.
But that ties in with our last thought, which is hope, right?
Great.
That is the fundamental thing of hope. Like coming in humility to saying you're going to do what you can with the mess that I've made or the thing I've tried to do here, where I'm putting my hope and trust in you and not in myself and my own abilities.
Yeah. That was a long pause.
What's that look for? I know, I interrupted you. Sorry.
There's I guess maybe, to talk about hope, to springboard off of that, there's also another great line. It's from Romans. St. Paul talks about be renewed in your mind. And the Greek word for renewal it's actually metamorphosis. So it's like a caterpillar going to becoming a butterfly, like a complete renewal of the mind, insofar as you are a spiritual organism. If you're in the state of grace, you are a temple of the Holy Spirit, and so if you view things through the lens of the spiritual realities, of what's really going on, your mind is you're gonna view things through a completely
that.
through a completely different lens. So so
love
hope,
that.
like you said, it's not material successes or whatever, but you're constantly trying to turn towards God and be anchored in God.
That's it. I mean, we're given that gift of hope in baptism, right? The faith, hope, and charity, the theological virtues, were given in the gift of baptism. They're perfected in confirmation by the Holy Spirit, but just to cling to that, and also to remember, just from a practical perspective, when you feel despair and discouragement, especially in the era of social media, everyone's doing it better than you, everyone's more popular than you, why should I try to do this thing? I can't do it as well, and so is to cling to God made us unique. You have a unique gift to share. We have unique gifts to share, and embrace your gifts. And if those gifts result in one other person's life being enriched, that's awesome. You don't have to affect 1 million people to gauge your level of success. It's just living your life according to the good news of the gospel and hoping that even one other life is changed by you. So that's the real hope. Is that the hope is like God's doing the work, we're just his hands. Wow, covered a lot of ground. I know we could talk for like 10 more hours, but we won't.
Yeah, there's
so much. There's so much
there's
to
a
talk
lot,
about.
There's a lot of generalities that are in there, and hopefully we can unpack some of that, and but one of the takeaways, just to mention it again, is it's so profoundly important to be aware that every day is a new opportunity.
I love that.
You are involved, whether you want to be or not, in a spiritual warfare. I mean, we're constantly trying to make progress. We want to grow closer to God, and there are obstacles in the way. Every day presents its new challenges, but there are tools out there, to properly engage in the spiritual warfare. And we can talk about some of those too.
Yeah, including having
awareness,
a spiritual director, a deep prayer life, staying close to the sacraments when you're allowed to.
Right, and also trying to figure out, when you get something like a thought of despair, or you're kind of moved towards just becoming frustrated or anxious, or whatever it is. So I mean, there are things that you can do to kind of figure out, well, what is the source of this, and how do I treat this? And I mean, that's something for another day, but
there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of light.
Yeah, awareness, like just be aware of, like, that's the big thing, is
be aware. And also, God's won the battle. Like, these are the battle, like these little battles, like Jesus has won victory for us. We can believe in that.
That's right.
Cling to that.
You're not the savior.
Wait, what was that? Like, I know that there is a God and I am not he.
That's right.
All right, friends. We'll see you next time.